Terence Crawford says he is not getting the type of fights that Canelo is getting, and he says so he has to prove that he's number one. We're going to talk about that in this video. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Make sure you smash the like button. Listen, it takes a few seconds. Please throw a like on the video. It goes a long way. Reach one, teach one, helps others to find this content. Now, link in the description. You guys see it. Terence Crawford. He says Saul Canelo Alvarez is, quote, getting all the fights that he wants, but I have to prove that I'm number one, right? And this has been a long-standing battle as far as who do you rank pound for pound number one. Some people still say it's Crawford. Some people say it's Canelo, etc. So this is what Terence Crawford is saying. Undefeated Crawford, he will defend his WBO title against Shawn November 20th. In the toughest test of his career to date. Canelo's captured undisputed at super middleweight, beating Caleb Smith, Billy Joe Saunders, Caleb Plant inside of a year, blah, blah, blah. This is what Crawford had to say. Let's get to it. Let me highlight it for you guys so you guys get to see it easier. He said, Canelo, he's definitely doing things differently to me because he is able and capable of doing those things. Crawford told Sky Sports about Canelo's 12-month stretch. He has fought 4 times in the past year. He has become undisputed. He is getting all of the fights that he wants right now. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to. Crawford is a 3-weight world champion, right? Undisputed at super lightweight, 140 pounds. He says a feat that Josh Taylor has emulated and now sits atop of the welterweight division, blah, blah, blah. Crawford will finally have his chance to remind the world he may reign above Canelo as the number one pound for pound fighter. Terence Crawford says, it has been frustrating, he admitted, about watching Canelo's run, but what's meant for me, I will have. Everything happens for a reason, and I believe that my time is coming. Asked what his goal to prove was, Crawford said, to be the best fighter in the world, simple. I feel like I'm already there, but I have to prove to the world, and it starts with Porter. A host of major fights could finally open up for Crawford if he dispatches the rugged and experienced Porter. Yordenis Ugas, who upset Pacquiao, rising star Virgil Ortiz, etc. Crawford has won all 37 of his fights to date. Now, I'm glad that Terence Crawford is saying this, and some people are going to be mad at me, but I told you so. The great Ego Stradamus strikes again. I'm the best in the business. Now, I've been in the boxing game for years, put in that work for y'all and remain true. And it's funny to me to hear Terence Crawford say this because he is now finally admitting what I've already told you guys in the world of boxing. He's a great fighter. Terence Crawford is a great fighter, but he's telling you out his own mouth what I've been telling you. The great Ego Stradamus strikes again. He says it's been frustrating seeing a guy like Canelo get all this notoriety and get all the fights he wants, and I haven't been able to do it. The only thing I will say is Terence Crawford almost has this woe is me type of attitude and this victimhood mentality in terms of that's how I'm perceiving the comments he's saying. And he really has more control than he's admitting to. And namely, that was the decision to re-sign to Top Rank. And a lot of people had questions. They said, Bud, you're a terrific fighter. Why are you re-signing to Top Rank? Listen, I can't tell anybody where to re-sign or what to do with their career. But Terence Crawford, he's just now fighting Shawn Porter. And truth be told, I'm just being real with y'all like I always do. I personally think it's an excellent fight. I think it'll be a competitive fight. I want to see the fight, but it's going to be hard to surpass Errol Spence Jr. in the eyes of many when you're following in his shadow and his footsteps with opponents, right? Or just PBC fighters in general. And I think Terence Crawford is coming to that realization. So for example, By the time he fights Shawn Porter, these are his last two opponents, Kell Brook, Shawn Porter, are guys that Errol Spence has now beaten 4 years ago, 2 years ago, whatever, 2 to 4 years ago. Errol Spence beat Kell Brook in 2017 by stoppage, and he did it when Kell Brook was of that weight class, right? Yeah, he went up to fight Golovkin, but that was one fight. Then when Terence Crawford fought him, his last fight was in 2017, and he hadn't made welterweight in 3 years. So that's a big difference. He was fighting above 151 pounds, right? Big difference. And he was a champion when Errol Spence fought him versus when Terence Crawford fought him. He wasn't a champion. So stark differences. And Errol Spence fought him in Sheffield. So realistically, I'm gonna fight Errol, hit him with my chocolate brownie, and all of a sudden, he fought him in Sheffield where he's from. So of course, Errol Spence, you can say what you want, but Errol Spence fought the better welterweight version of Kell Brook, if you're being realistic with yourself. Because you can't, how's he the best? How can you say that Kell Brook was the best at welterweight in 2020? He just fought him in December 2020, right? So how can you say he was the best in 2020 when he hadn't fought in the weight class for 3 years? It doesn't make sense. Same thing with his new opponent. Errol Spence beat him probably 2019. I was at the fight, right? So there is something that could be gained if Terence Crawford has an easy time with Shawn Porter versus Errol Spence fight was pretty much a buckle down war for both of them, where they both were, putting in great work. So if Terence Crawford could become the first person to stop Shawn Porter, something like that, he could still get some credit, but it's still a guy that Errol Spence already beat. It's just, that's the fact. So Terence Crawford is admitting it. And like he's saying, he's making it sound like, Canelo got all the fights, but Canelo also freed himself from a contract that wasn't working for him, right? He thought Golden Boy had put stuff in his contract that he wasn't okay with, and he made decisions to get out of it. Terence Crawford had escape routes, meaning he didn't have to sign extensions, and that could have got him closer to what he keeps saying is his goal, to be the best and show everyone he's the best. But he chose to stay where he was comfortable, and that's the reality of it. And then, I could go deeper and deeper, but everything I said was true. His own promoter, Bob Arum, was doing interviews real recently, and also those interviews did a disservice to Terence Crawford's brand, because Bob Arum revealed on many occasions, he did interviews with The Athletic and others, and he said that Terence Crawford is not a moneymaker. He says, I'm losing money every time Terence Crawford fights, and it's not my fault, and I could have bought a big house with the amount of money. Same thing with, you look at Terence Crawford, his fight week is this week, and so far, to me, it does not feel like a fight week. Even though I'm excited for the fight and I think it'll be a good fight, where's the promotion? Okay, they did a blood, sweat, and tears, but how many of you guys, leave me a message in the comment section, how many of you guys truthfully watch Blood, Sweat, and Tears episode 1 and 2, right? Versus you look at Canelo and Caleb Plant, Showtime did a hell of a job and really put that in front of our faces as boxing fans, right? Me telling you guys that there's a special Blood, Sweat, and Tears, I know this is news to some, because some people who would maybe even want to watch it don't even know that it's out, and you haven't really heard much from it. But anytime Tyson Fury's fighting, ESPN seems to pull out all the stops and try to make it, even when Tyson Fury was fighting Otto Vailin and stuff, they try to make it sound like it was this epic deal, like he was always fighting on Mexican Independence Day weekend and he's wearing sombreros and everyone's laughing at Tyson Fury's joke. Lomachenko fights, they try to make it like it's a big deal and have all these trailers and, everyone's talking about it and even talking favorably, all the commentators and stuff like that. But for Terence Crawford, it seems like he just gets treated as if he's not as good as he really is. Like for me personally, I'm just keeping it real. If if I had signed Terence Crawford, Tyson Fury, and Lomachenko, Terence Crawford would be my promotion's #1 priority because I think he's that good. But that's not what you see over there at ESPN. It's not what you see with Top Rank, in my opinion. I don't think they prioritize Crawford as good as he is. So Crawford, he's admitting what I've already told you. And when I said it, y'all said I was the bad guy. So y'all got to make that make sense. He said, hey, it is frustrating. I'm not getting the fights that he wants. Told you. I mean, to me, I got to put Canelo over him, even though I think Crawford skillfully is harder to beat. You know what I mean? He's more of a handful. But I can't act oblivious to the fact that Canelo, being who he is and having his star build, he gets to get the big fights when he wants. That's, if anything, a lot of people say Canelo's cherry picking and stuff like that. But when he wants to turn up and get a Triple G or Danny Jacobs and he decides the time is right, he can at least get him. Terence Crawford, he's getting like Errol Spence leftovers, Amir Khan, someone Danny Garcia had already beat, and Errol Spence beat Danny Garcia, Shawn Porter beat Danny Garcia. You know what I mean? So I don't know how Terence Crawford can surpass Errol. We got to see what happens this weekend. Again, if he beats Shawn Porter emphatically, I think that'll be big for his brand. But, more of what I've already told you, but you guys said I didn't know what I was talking about. Drop your thoughts in the comment section. We working. And I'm out.